Morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'd like to call the Oregon State Land Board meeting to order. Today is December 12th. It is 10 a.m. and it's good to see everyone. We have several action items today and informational items. Look forward to a very productive meeting. And with that, we'll start with the consent items, which are approval of the minutes from the October 10th Land Board meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I so move.
Treasurer moves. Do I have a second? Secretary seconds. Any discussion on the minutes? Any objections?
No.
Seeing none, minutes approved. We'll move on to action items. Action item number 2 is a request to proceed with due diligence for potential land trade at the entrance to the South Slough Reserve Visitor Center. Good morning, Director Walker.
Good morning, Governor.
Number 2.
And good morning, Land Board. This is going to be kind of a fun Land Board today because I have engaged staff to do all of the presentations, but for the Elliott. I'm on the hook for that one, but I have such a fine staff. I wanted them to help me out with these, so I didn't have to hear myself talk so much today. So we have Dr. Bree Yednock on the screen, and she's the manager of the South Slough, and will take us through this presentation. So Bree, it's all yours.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
And good morning.
Great, thank you. Good morning. Governor Kotek, Secretary Griffin Valade, Treasurer Reed. For the record, my name is Bree Yednock, and I'm the Reserve Manager of the South Slough Reserve in Charleston, Oregon. And I thank you for the opportunity to be here with you virtually this morning. So this topic, as Director Walker mentioned, is the subject is related to protecting the public safety and resolving property encroachments at the South Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve in Coos County. And the issue and authorities are laid out before you in the agenda item. So I'll start with background to give you some context here. So the Department of State Lands oversees the South Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve on the southern Oregon coast, and the reserve manages this nearly 7,000 acre reserve for long-term research, education, and public recreation, with a focus on the stewardship and protection of natural and cultural resources. By statute, the governor-appointed South Slough Reserve Management Commission provides for the administration of the reserve. In June of 2023, during a special meeting of the Reserve Management Commission, the commission directed reserve staff to explore the feasibility of a land trade at the entrance of our visitor center. And the potential land trade that we're talking about today was the result of many discussions with the Lee family, who own and operate a business on land adjacent to the reserve's entrance on Seven Devils Road. And that's what this map is showing you in the slide. That's Seven Devils Road, and then to the right is the driveway going to the Reserve Visitor Center. So the Lee family had originally requested permission to use the reserve's existing driveway and establish a secondary driveway across the reserve to access their property. When we started looking into the ownership boundaries, it was determined that there were a couple encroachments both on the reserve land and on the Lee family property. And so this idea of a land trade came up as a mutually beneficial solution to resolve the encroachments and provide the Lee family with the access that they had requested. So in September, the department received an application to exchange land from the Lee family, and that's included in your meeting materials as Appendix A to this agenda item. The request is to subdivide and trade parcels of equal size, approximately 0.29 acres each. And the map is showing those parcels highlighted. So the area the reserve would trade to the Lee family is highlighted in blue, and the area the reserve would receive is highlighted in yellow. The property that the reserve would be trading was purchased with grant funding from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for the purpose of creating a welcoming entrance and improving internet connectivity, safety, parking, and access for all those big school buses that come to the reserve. And I'll note that this is very high priority project for the reserve. Currently, our operations at the Visitor Center are severely impacted by unreliable internet. However, subdividing and trading a portion of this parcel will not impact those project plans at all. So we still plan to make the improvements at the entrance. Yes, so designs for that new entrance are currently being developed with funding and project support from the Friends of South Slough, for which we're very grateful. They've been fabulous partners. With respect to public involvement, this trade was discussed at public meetings of the South Slough Reserve Management Commission in June, September, and November of 2023. No public comments were received, and the commission voiced unanimous support at these meetings for the reserve to continue working on this project. So with that, I think I'll pass it back to Director Walker for the recommendation and any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Yednock. The department would recommend that the land board authorize the reserve through the Department of State Lands real property staff to complete due diligence reports in support of this land exchange. We need appraisals and evaluation so we can determine if these are equally valued, and if they're not, we'll make adjustments in terms of seeing which party would have to pay a little more money than the other.
Thank you, Director Walker. Do we have a motion for the recommendation?
Madam Chair, I move approval of the recommendation and that the department complete due diligence reports to support the land exchange.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Do we have a second? Thank you, Madam Secretary. Dr. Yednock, I want to say thank you for the thoughtfulness of the process to get us to this point. So thank you. Questions or comments about the motion? Seeing none, are there any objections to the motion? Seeing none, motion approved. Thank you very much. And we will move on to action item number 3.
All right, action item number 3 will have Dr. Yednock present, and we also have Brian Cochran on the screen from our Bend office, our real property division. This one will be a little bit interesting because of all of the mineral rights. So ask questions if you need to, because we're happy to answer them. The issue before you is whether the land board should authorize the due diligence to support the sale of the land and mineral rights out of the Common School Fund and into the South Slough Reserve Management. The authorities are set out below in your documentation, and I will turn it over to Dr. Yednock to talk about this really great project.
Great, thank you. So I'll begin with the background again, and having just followed the previous agenda item, I'll just note that the Department of State Lands oversees the National Estuarine Research Reserve on the southern Oregon coast. The agenda item before you is related to a proposed land acquisition. And the proposed acquisition property is an 80-acre parcel of upland forest adjacent to the southeastern boundary of the South Slough Reserve, shown on the map on the slide before you and in Appendix A of your meeting materials. As an asset of the Common School Fund, the parcel is owned by the department and managed by Oregon Department of Forestry. The state had planned timber harvests of the parcel until observations of the endangered marbled murrelet put harvest plans on hold. As such, with the marbled murrelet observations, it's clear that the parcel is comprised of late-stage successional forest habitat. It also encompasses the creeks of 2 headwaters that feed into the main waterway of the South Slough. So given the location of this parcel and its high conservation value, the reserve submitted a grant proposal in 2017 to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, to fund the purchase and transfer of the parcel from the Common School Fund to the reserve. The grant proposal was ranked highly and it was recommended for funding, but unfortunately it was determined that the reserve lacked the required 1-to-1 matching funds, and so the grant could not be awarded. However, right now we're in a period of time where several millions of dollars are becoming available to the National Estuarine Research Reserve System through the bipartisan infrastructure law. or bill, and these funds do not require any match. So as a result, the reserve is in a favorable position to resume this acquisition project. In 2022, we received capacity building funding from NOAA through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And we partnered with the Wild Rivers Land Trust to complete preliminary due diligence activities related to this acquisition and to develop a grant proposal for the next round of NOAA NERS funding. The Wild Rivers Land Trust, I just want to give them a shout out and really note that they've been phenomenal partners. The staff there have just been incredible and helpful in working on this project. They've already completed the required property title search, the environmental assessment, the property survey, and the appraisal. The appraised value is $745,000. And the reserve was approved to submit the full grant proposal to NOAA by January 10th of 2024. It's important to note, as Director Walker mentioned, that the department does not own the mineral rights on this property, but acquiring those rights would really strengthen the grant proposal. So the department has done some initial title research on this property and uncovered multiple mineral rights reservations on DSL-owned land, not only on this property, but around the property in this area. Those rights have been established during the past 70 years. So further due diligence is clearly needed to confirm the ownership of the mineral reservations and obtain mineral data and appraisals. If we are awarded the grant, the department will bring this item before the land board again in mid-2024 for approval to complete the acquisition and transfer the property to the reserve, where it'd be managed under the authority of the South Slough Reserve Management Commission. This action will also require a vote by the land board and the Board of Forestry to decertify the forest from active management by Oregon Department of Forestry. I'll just finish this information by noting that the action would support the department's strategic plan goals in generating revenue for the Common School Fund, as well as supporting a thriving Oregon through habitat restoration, resiliency, and research. With respect to public involvement, the South Slough Reserve Management Commission discussed this matter at 2 public meetings in March and December 2022. The commission authorized reserve staff to submit grant proposals for the project, and no public comments were submitted at either of those meetings. So with that, I will thank you again for the opportunity to present for you and pass it back to Director Walker.
Thank you, Dr. Yednock. I want to point out to the land board what you likely heard is there are incredible partnerships that we have at the South Slough. The Wild Rivers Land Trust was really instrumental in helping us get this far on this project. The mineral rights issue is just a fascinating thing, that there could be so many owners over the last 70 years. So this is going to be a fun little adventure for Brian Cochran to uncover all of these owners. So what I will do today is the department recommends the State Land Board authorize the South Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve through the Department of State Lands Real Property staff to complete that due diligence work in support of the sale of land and mineral rights.
Thank you, Director Walker. We have a recommendation on this item. Do we have a motion to approve the recommendation?
Madam Chair, I move approval of the recommendation as just described.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. A second. Thank you, Madam Secretary. So we have a recommendation here. Again, I want to echo the value of our partnerships with groups such as the Wild Rivers Land Trust. This is a unique opportunity, and sometimes when the federal government has money, you have to be paying attention. So but yeah, clearly some more work to do on looking through all these different pieces of paperwork, I'm sure. So the conversation is about continued due diligence on this. Is there any questions or comments for Dr. Yednock or the director? Seeing none, are there any objections to the motion? Seeing none, motion is approved. Fun things happening at the South Slough. Okay.
Thank you, Governor. And I will tell you that when I was in the legislature and served on Ways and Means with you, by the way, I used to call it free money, and I got pulled aside and said, "Stop calling it that. People are calling in and wanting some of the free money." So I started calling it pixie dust. So I refer to all of the federal money now as pixie dust.
Well, huge opportunities coming from our federal partners. And I think half the challenge is being ready for them. And we wouldn't be here without our support of our partners.
That's exactly right.
So that is a fantastic place to be. So moving on to action item number 4,
All right.
land board appointment regarding the Oregon Ocean Science Trust. Madam.
Great, thank you. And joining me at the table is Jean Strait, our Deputy Director of Administration. So Jean, take it away.
Yes, good morning, Governor Kotek.
Nope.
Now it is. Okay, good morning, Governor Kotek, Secretary Griffin Valade, and Treasurer Reed. As Director Booker said, my name is Jean Strait, and I'm the Deputy Director of Administration here at State Lands. And I'm here to talk about the membership of the Oregon Oceanic Science Trust. So it came to my attention this past summer that 2 of our OOST members' terms had expired last December 31st, 2022, and that the remaining 3 were due to expire this December 31st, 2023. So in conversations with the land board assistants, we determined we wanted to establish a standardized recruitment process to provide greater opportunity for the wide range of Oregonians to apply. So we posted the announcement on the DSL website, the OOST website. We sent to the trust mailing list and to DLCD listserv. We sent to the tribal clusters, and then our communications team posted on our social media sites. We did receive 8 applications from a wide range of backgrounds, and we would like to nominate the following for approval by the land board. First one is Laura Anderson, is from a multi-generational commercial fishing family, the founder of Local Ocean Seafoods, an independent systems seafood consultant, and a leader in Oregon's sustainable fisheries movement. Laura served 2 years as a Peace Corps volunteer in the Philippines, where she helped a village start to restore its coral reef fishery. After returning to the United States, she earned an MS in Marine Resource Management from Oregon State University. And after receiving her degree, she worked as a consultant to nonprofits, trying to improve the coastal fish industry through ecological restoration, salmon marketing, and community-based fishery management. Laura is the current chair of the OOST, and her term would begin on January 1st, 2024, and end on December 31st, 2027. Dr. Karina Nilsson is the Oregon Sea Grant Director. For most of her career as an academic scientist, she has been involved in substantial public service work related to coastal and ocean science and stewardship. She has extensive experience with coastal zone research and environmental monitoring, and as well as working across institutions and with community members to develop evidence-based understanding of different stewardship approaches. Dr. Nielsen's term would begin on January 1st, 2024, and end on December 31st, 2027. Ted DeWitt is retired from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. He has spent his professional career conducting applied ecological research on coastal oceans and estuarine ecosystems, and most of that was leading research for the EPA. In his capacity at EPA, he led and managed multi-laboratory research teams focused on ecosystem service sciences, and received numerous awards from the agency for his research and service. He served as the chief of the Pacific Coastal Ecological Branch Laboratory in Newport, Oregon. Ted's term will begin on January 1st, 2024, and end on December 31st, 2026. Keith Wolf, PhD, serves as a program policy manager for the U.S. Department of Commerce, NOAA Fisheries, Oregon, Washington Coastal Office. He has 3 decades working on ocean issues in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Alaska, Canada, and California. He has a Bachelor's of Science degree in Natural Resources and Biology and a PhD in Environmental Engineering. He has a significant background in grant programs, including the Pacific Coastal Salmon Recovery Fund since its inception, NOAA Sea Grant, and others. Keith's term would begin on January 1st, 2024, and end on December 31st, 2026. And finally, Kristen Dawn serves as the director of Coastal Quest. She has a bachelor's degree in marine biology and a master's degree in marine affairs. She has a deep commitment to advancing stewardship and knowledge of Oregon's oceans and coastal resources. Her experience spans 2 decades in a variety of ocean policy and management topics, ranging from wave energy to fisheries management to marine reserves and protected areas. She has developed enduring partnerships with universities, research institutions, the fishing industry, non-governmental organizations, philanthropic foundations, state and federal agencies, and local coastal community groups. Kristen's term will begin on January 1st, 2024 and end on December 31st, 2026. And I believe we have 2 of the prospective board members online, Laura Anderson and Ted DeWitt, and we have Keith Wolf in the room if you would like to ask them any questions.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And the recommendation is for the appointments given the timeline
Yes.
that you have described. Let's move to the motion for the recommendation.
Madam Chair, move approval of the recommendation. Can certainly repeat the specifics, but 3 people to 3-year terms and 2 people to 4-year terms.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Is there a second?
There is a second.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So before us, we have, well, first of all, I just want to say a couple things about the Oregon Ocean Science Trust. To have the depth of experience that we have in Oregon is impressive. I'm always inspired by the folks who want to serve in these kinds of roles. For the record, we've received long, applications and people really committed to doing this work going forward. I also think that the staggering is really important. And so I really appreciate we'll do a couple for this time and others for a different timeline. It's really important so we have continuity there. I want to open up to my colleagues, questions, comments about.
I'm very impressed with the folks that we are about to appoint. Impressed with their background, their record. Great.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Treasurer?
Madam Chair, I certainly feel similarly in terms of the commitment that people have and the importance of having the connection between policy and science, and these folks are going to help us. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. And, as coming in as in my first year here, making sure that we have a process and we make sure people understand their roles, and then having this kind of public process to appoint is really important, and to re-up those roles in this case for several folks. I'm excited now that I know that the trust is there. Beware, we will be asking you more questions probably. So with that, are there any objections to the appointments as recommended? No. Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you all for being available. We just think you're wonderful. Look forward to working with you. So, thank you very much. And congratulations, and thank you for your service. It's very, very important.
All right.
I want to make sure let's see. So those were and just to clarify verbally for the record, we did not have anyone signed up to testify for any. I forgot to ask during each item.
Correct. No one was signed up to testify for anything we have to.
No one is signed up to testify at all. Okay, so we're moving on to informational items. So item number 5, Aquatic Resource Management Annual Report, Madam Director.
Thank you, Governor. And I'm really excited about this report. I like to get these going at the presentations every year, because you learn a lot about what we do here at the department. And here with us today will be Bill Ryan, our Deputy Director. So I'm going to turn this wonderful report over to Bill, who we really had some great work from our communications team putting this report together along with Bill's staff. So take it away, Bill.
Morning, Governor Kotek, Secretary Griffin Foley, and Treasurer Reed. For the record,
Microphone.
and we'll start that again. Good morning, Governor Kotek, Treasurer Reed, and Secretary Griffin Valade. For the record, my name is Bill Ryan. I'm the Deputy Director of Operations here at the Department of State Lands, and I'm pleased to present highlights from the Aquatic Resource Management Program's annual report for fiscal year 2023. The full report is in your packet. I'd like to start with a word about the program's work for Oregon. We provide stewardship for waters and wetlands of the state by overseeing the state's removal, fill, and wetland conservation laws and use of the state's publicly owned waterways, or what we call navigable waterways. From the Pacific Ocean to the west and the Snake River on the east, our team strives for excellent service supporting communities and landowners in protecting waters and wetlands. All Oregonians benefit from having rivers and streams for swimming and fishing, and wetlands to clean water and reduce flood impacts. Through the removal fill permitting process, we work collaboratively with applicants and communities in minimizing a project's impacts to waters and wetlands. Projects with impacts that require permits are quite varied. They range from replacing a culvert to improve fish passage to a large-scale industrial or housing development filling wetlands to provide room. We also work with ports, utility companies, businesses, and property owners to authorize uses of Oregon's publicly owned waterways. Examples of uses include marinas, shipyards, docks, and floating homes, among many others. Next slide, please. Oh, I got a slide here.
You are in.
There we go.
control.
All right. So our program continues to see steady demand for services. We've been really busy the last several years. This slide shows the locations of removal fill authorizations that were issued in fiscal year 2023. And as you can see the pattern there, there's a concentration on the west side where there are more people and also more wetlands and waterways, but we really do provide services throughout the entire state. The program reviews reports or notices of potential projects in waters and wetlands to determine if a future permit may be needed. In fiscal year 2023, 6 staff reviewed 360 wetland delineation reports and over 1,000 wetland land use notices. These reviews help determine whether a removal fill permit may be needed for a project and are essential for project planning and preparing a permit application. We continue to see a high number of removal fill permit applications across the state. The department made decisions on 622 permit applications in fiscal year 23, which is a 4% increase above the 5-year average. After permits are issued, we monitor projects for compliance, and particularly when those permits have a site restoration requirement or a mitigation site built that is replacing wetlands or waterways. DSL is actively monitoring 577 projects. This fiscal year, we opened 73 new permits with monitoring requirements and closed 67. The same 10 staff that issue permits and perform monitoring also handle complaints and enforcements. Enforcement is an important part of our oversight. This year, 42 enforcements were opened for unauthorized removal fill, and 70 enforcement files were closed, including cases opened in previous years. We're seeing consistently high demand for wetland review and removal fill permits coupled with relatively static staffing levels, and that's resulting in some service impacts. For example, we're investigating and seeking to resolve only the most impactful violations of the removal fill law. We don't really have the capacity to open an enforcement action and pursue enforcement on every violation that we become aware of. And so we're having to pick and choose the most important ones to put our resources toward. Monitoring compliance with permit requirements has also been affected. And so the priority for staff timing is issuing and renewing permits needing to move development projects forward. And so often we're not able to actually review the monitoring reports that are submitted after a project is permitted and built, meaning that often we don't catch the problems earlier when it's easier to resolve them. And that's just a prioritization of resourcing a situation. Finally, our ability to provide wetland determinations has also been affected. Determinations are a no-cost way for property or project owners to get an initial sense of whether wetlands and waters are regulated by DSL may be present on the property. And so they contact us and time allowing, our staff will go out and look at a property and determine whether there are actually wetlands or waters that are jurisdictional and are present on the property. They don't do the full wetland delineation of mapping the locations of those, but just giving an indication, is there further work that needs to happen here in order to get authorization from the department? And so that kind of wetland determination work really is important in reducing unintentional wetland losses and helping forecasting what might be required for a project. And my staff was able to respond to 242 determination requests last year. So quite a few of those, but not all the requests that came in. So, I wanted to actually share something about that slide. So that slide there is actually an example of work done for wetland delineation. And so in order to identify a wetland under state law and federal law, the location has to have wetland hydrology, wetland vegetation, and wetland soils. And the way that is determined is by doing sample plots out on the property. And so that is a soil pit where you can also look at hydrology as well. And that chunk of soil there is actually indicative of wetland soils, that gray color of the soil, and then the oxidized or the rust colored root channels there are indicative of wetland soils. So just wanted to share that. So demand for services to use of state-owned waterways is also remaining steady. Our proprietary staff, that's the staff that oversees the use of the state-owned navigable waterways, we oversee more than 5,100 active waterway use authorizations. In fiscal year 23, staff issued 66 new waterway authorizations and renewed 396 of them. Most authorizations have a specific term determining when the holder will apply for renewal, and anticipating the timeline of future events and future renewals helps the department identify when staff capacity will result in service impacts, like those projected for the current fiscal year. We anticipate almost 700 renewals in this coming fiscal year, which is a 66% increase from fiscal year 2023. For all program services, additional capacity is needed in key areas to ensure continued protection of Oregon's wetlands and waterways and timely customer service. We've started addressing the largest gaps in services by recruiting limited duration staff and are identifying more long-term solutions. And I'll get to that a little bit further on in my presentation. So I do want to talk a little about ARM program costs. I'd like to highlight progress on the ARM program cost project, which aims to ensure protection of Oregon's wetlands and waters without subsidy by the Common School Fund. This is a focused project in the department's near-term strategic action plan. First, we were finally able to tackle abandoned and derelict vessels without our school kids footing the bill. 2 bills approved during the 23 legislative session are now supporting the department in removing vessels from waterways and developing a statewide abandoned and derelict, or ADV, vessel program. House Bill 2914 established the Oregon Abandoned and Derelict Vessel Program at DSL to address those ADVs, and it created the Oregon Abandoned and Derelict Vessel Fund at the Oregon Treasury. And House Bill 5029 provided $18.8 million from the Monsanto PCB settlement for the new ADV fund. And I'm really pleased to report that the first vessel cleanup using those funds was completed in November, and that was the removal of the fishing vessel Tiffany from the Columbia River. And this is a large vessel, about 100 feet long, that we've been aware of for many years, and actually had been managing it and pumping the bilges on a regular basis to keep it from sinking again, until we had resources available to remove it from the waterway. And so we were able to do that. And that was a former buoy tender and a commercial fishing vessel. It was towed from the river near Rainier to Hayek Maritime in Astoria for deconstruction, hazard abatement, and disposal at a total cost of $1.4 million. So, which actually was a decent price, as we've learned from disposing of several of these vessels in the last couple of years. The slide, actually, that's not the Tiffany. The slide is the U.S. Coast Guard cutter, the Alert, which is in dry dock prior to being constructed earlier this year. And the Alert was actually deconstructed using Common School funds rather than the Monsanto monies, because those weren't available at that time. I'll share a little bit more about the status of the Abandoned and Derelict Vessel Program in a moment. Examining fees is a critical component of our effort to eliminate program subsidy by the Common School Fund. House Bill 2238 passed during the 23 session. That bill requires the department director to adopt rules establishing fees related to removal or fill permit applications, general authorizations for some types of removal fill activities, and wetland delineation reports. We anticipate beginning the rulemaking process in the spring to meet the bill's deadline of January 1, 2026 to adopt rules, fees in rule so existing fee amounts can be removed from statute. The department's emphasis on supporting and engaging communities continued in fiscal year 23, particularly through creating and sharing trainings and tools. Our staff are experts in what they do, protecting Oregon's wetlands and waterways and helping Oregonians understand where these resources are and the benefits they provide. One of the ways we do that is by maintaining the statewide wetlands inventory. This GIS web map is used by local planners to see whether a wetland may be present on a project site, and if so, provide DSL with a wetland land use notice. The number of notices received has continually increased since 2018 when the map was first released and published online, which is a testament to the success of that tool and the excellent training provided by our Aquatic resource planner. We plan to improve this tool by early 2025 by adding additional known wetland areas, which will increase usability and reliability of the tool. And we're actually using EPA Wetland Program Development Grant funds to do the majority of that work. That slide there on the left is a screenshot of the state wetland inventory, and it shows the local wetland inventory boundaries for the cities of Salem, Turner, and Monmouth. Our staff are also experts in tools like the Stream Functional Assessment Method and the Oregon Rapid Wetland Assessment Protocol, which are used by state agencies and natural resource professionals during the removal fill permitting process. These assessments provide helpful information for making removal fill permit decisions, including how lost waterway or wetlands benefits will be replaced through compensatory mitigation actions. The slide on the right there shows DSL mitigation specialist Gray Wolf on the right, providing training on the Stream Functional Assessment Method. We're excited to share a new educational partnership with Clackamas Community College's Environmental Learning Center for these trainings. Though DSL staff did an excellent job providing these trainings, capacity has always been a limitation. This partnership with the college helps us expand the reach of our trainings, offer continuing education benefits, and secure administrative support for registration. This allows our staff to focus on what we do best, which is delivering quality instruction, while the college does what they do best, creating spaces for learning. We held a very successful training course with our new partners in September with 30 professionals in attendance, and we're excited to continue delivering this curriculum in 24 alongside our partners in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And then here's I'd like to look ahead a little bit on some of the priorities and projects that we're going to be working on in the future. And once again, in that slide, there's Gray Wolf on the left, and she's actually out in the Linton area of Portland. I'm at the Linton Mitigation Bank on the Columbia River. So the department anticipates increased demand for many DSL services as a result of Executive Order 2304, which set housing production goals at 36,000 homes per year across the state. We believe the state can meet these goals while also protecting natural resources, but recognize we would need additional resources to adequately support that desired pace. Communities are likely to be developing or updating local wetland inventories, revising local court ordinance, or changing wetland protections. We currently have one planner supporting and reviewing such efforts, and so we'd need some additional capacity for that as things heat up. And as development increases, so will wetland land use notices, wetland determination requests, and wetland delineation report reviews. We currently have 5 staff doing this work, and we're not able to meet existing demand in a timely fashion. And so increasing that workload would result in additional challenges there. We also foresee an increase in the number of removal fill permit applications. We currently have 10 staff doing that work, and they're very busy and have been at very high levels, kind of historically high levels of authorizations coming in for the last several years. And we have that information in the appendix of the report. Finally, we expect demand for additional compensatory mitigation options, such as mitigation banks or expansion of DSL's in lieu fee programs. And we currently have 2 permanent staff and 1 limited duration person doing that work and would need some increase there. And so this slide here shows before and after images of a small infill housing to the project. So you can see the before shot is on the left there, and you've got sort of a grass field with a few trees and shrubs, and those numbers and circles, those are sample plots that were taken to establish where the jurisdictional wetlands and waters were. And then you can see the result of the development afterward. On the side, looks like they've created 6 housing lots, of which 5 has houses on them. And so 6 and 7. And you can see that former grass area that was remained actually is being used as a mitigation site, it looks like, where you've got lots of trees and shrubs developing into a forested wetland character there. So we've continued action to address ADV. So that photo there is actually the Tiffany. And that's the Tiffany on a giant boat trailer. I forget, they told me how many wheels it has, and I forgot now, but it's a lot. And it's getting pulled into an enclosure area to be decommissioned and salvaged. And we do recycle the steel that we can, but in general, it's a very costly effort, even with the salvage that is done. As directed by the Land Board and facilitated by House Bill 2914, the department has convened a work group to help inform development of the state's abandoned and derelict vessel program, as well as helping prioritize ongoing removal of vessels using the new fund. DSL will submit a report to the legislature on work group progress on or before February 15th, 2024. In spring 2024, the department will present a program framework that includes prevention, response, enforcement, and education and outreach to the Land Board for consideration, as well as identifying legislative and funding needs ahead of the 2025 session. And finally, I'll finish by sharing some potential ARM program legislative concepts that may be before the Land Board for consideration. So these include topics related to historically filled lands, navigability of state waterways, and easements in the territorial sea. And with that, I want to just give a shout out to my program staff. They're really diligent, worked really hard. Some of them are feeling a little burned out, I have to be honest, but doing excellent work supporting the program and protecting Oregon's wetlands and waterways for all Oregonians. And also, as Vicki mentioned, I do want to do a shout out to Katrina and the rest of our comms team for doing a really good job of making what is usually a very dry report a lot more interesting to read. So thank you very much for that, and putting some wonderful photos and figures in there as well. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Director Walker, any comments before I?
Yeah, actually, I had a couple of points I wanted to make. And Madam Secretary, I hope you enjoyed this. This is your first time hearing this report. And it's thrilling to see what we do here at the agency. And this is only part of what we do. But I just wanted to touch on a couple points that Bill made today about the challenges that we're having. You know, as he mentioned, that we have seen consistently high numbers of permit applications, wetland delineation report reviews, wetland land use notices, and wetland determination requests. That has been consistent year after year after year in growth. So it's not like it's going to get less. It's just going to increase. We're also seeing a number of contested cases and lawsuits, and those cost us a lot of money. Especially since we have to pay for getting transcripts transcribed. I used to do that work. I was a court reporter, but that's expensive work. And at the same time, we've seen and we continue to see expectations of service delivery from the public. They want rapid turnaround service, quality service. We're happy to do it. The legislature and the executive branch have increased our workload as well, as you should. But what I'm saying with regard to that is we have new water quality TMDL requirements. We have broad public records requests. Those are very time consuming. Increased interest in our operations and expectations for transparency and rapid service. And these are all good things, but it takes staff time. And as Bill mentioned, our staff we're seeing a lot of burnout. They're really working hard and they're struggling. We also have developments at the federal level that are causing more work. The Supreme Court decision in the Sackett case has regarding federal wetland jurisdiction and protections has increased our work. We, as a result of all of this, and I've been here 5 years now, and we've talked at length about how can we solve this? So we're solving some of it with our removal fill fee structure. We're going to make sure that those folks pay for the work that they do. And right now they're not. So we commissioned an organizational assessment from a third-party consulting firm. That assessment took several months. It was completed last month. And together, our leadership team with staff is looking at the results and recommendations in that report to help us identify short and long-term solutions to those challenges and to inform our upcoming rulemaking. So I wanted to keep you updated as we develop analyses and recommendations regarding staffing, because when we come to you with our legislative menu of items, I'm going to have some pops in there that increase our staff. We just can't keep doing it. These folks have families and they should be working 40 hours a week, not 60 plus hours a week. It's okay for me to do that. I'm the director of the agency and I can do that, but we need to have work-life balance here, and I feel like we're losing it. And they do fantastic work. So I just wanted to put a plug in.
Thank you, Director. Maybe I will start there and say directly to all the staff, this is an amazing report. Presentation's really phenomenal. I appreciate the shout out to the comms team. For everyone who's doing the work day to day in the field, I very much appreciate that. We are asking folks to really look at customer service, and doing the day-to-day work to meet the needs of Oregonians is really important. And I just hope people are going to take a little time over the holiday to rest up. They've all been really busy. It's really fascinating to see the actual year-over-year numbers about some of the work. But it is hard work and it's absolutely necessary. And we need to be able to respond in a timely manner. So I look forward to seeing the proposals for the 2025 development of the governor's budget. And I want to take a point of privilege here and thank Bill personally for also stepping in for transitional leadership at the Department of Ag when you also have this job. So thank you very much. This is one team, and I do think people are pretty stretched. So we need to address that. And your reflections on what's going to be going on around housing production, we need to make sure people can get the answers they need. I think some of the IT improvements will help. I think having a workflow analysis is very important. So we can go to the legislature and say, we've looked under the couch cushions. We understand how we can do our job more effectively, and we can't do it with the resources we have. So I look forward to the conversation. With that, I want to open it up to my colleagues. Questions, comments? Mr. Treasurer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Director, I appreciate, and Mr. Ryan, I appreciate the report and the description that was throughout. As you know, I've been long concerned about the way the Common School Fund has been subsidizing various activities. I appreciate the reference both to the progress on abandoned derelict vessels. Good start, not continuing yet. We got to find that funding source. And in that spirit, I would love to hear a little more of an update on the process to update the fill removal fees. I wasn't entirely clear, Madam Director, when you talked about the organizational assessment, how that relates to those fees. Is that informing the level to which the fees should be increased, or perhaps one or both of you could give us a little bit more of an update on the process around the fee updates, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Appreciate the question. I'll have Bill follow up as well. But yes, the removal fill fee program is not paying for itself. And you know that because you're the longest serving member here and you've been through that with us. So our goal is to increase the fees where they need to be increased to pay for the program. And that way we can hire more staff to get the work done. And that would be what we're after now. And
Protect the common school.
and protect the Common School Fund, which is subsidizing this work, as you know. So Bill, maybe you can give us an update on where we're at with the working group. I think we've started the effort, but it's really going to take off in January.
Yes, Governor Kotek, Treasurer Reed, Director Walk is right there. And, the organizational assessment was really looking at interviewing a lot of staff to get a sense of where they're feeling and where the pressures were within our organization, and looking at ways to either increase capacity or maybe through structural change potentially improve things. And so that of course relates to staffing levels and of course our fee structure. You need a fee structure that supports your staffing level and staffing level that basically supports the fee structure. And so we have a policy analyst that's looking at our past numbers and the fiscal information to look at how much does it cost to produce what, to get a sense of if we're increasing our capacity by X amount, how much staff would that be and where would that be and how much would that cost? And then there's the policy question of how much of the burden of paying for the removal fill regulatory program should fall upon the individual applicants, who are the folks that are actually doing the removal fill activities, and how much of that burden should fall upon the general public, because we all benefit from protecting those resources. And so that's a policy consideration that we'll probably be coming back to get some guidance on that. But that's part of that consideration. In terms of the rulemaking for that, as I said, we're doing the analysis, looking at some of the numbers and some proposed paths forward. We're identifying a rulemaking advisory committee to serve in that, and then we'll be scheduling a several months process of conversations about what does that look like, hearing from different interests, hearing different proposals and ways to move forward, and then coming forward with some recommendations after that process. And we plan to start that process in earnest this spring. And it will require legislation, or might not, actually no, it won't. We have rulemaking ability, so hopefully we don't need legislation, and we can get that done before that, outside of the legislative session 25.
Yes, as you know, Mr. Treasurer, that one is a tough bill to get passed last session. I appreciated the testimony and support, and Ms. Howell was very instrumental in helping our staff, Chris Castelli, manage that. Having been in the legislature before, at least the three of us, we understand how difficult it is. You get one chamber to support it, and then you go to the other one, and okay. So there's a lot of machinations that took place on that bill, and we were successful on the very last day, is my understanding. So thank you for that help.
Well, and as we've talked, I think at some previous meetings, having fees in statute, I understand why we have them, but it doesn't allow for flexible governance when you're trying to do the customer service, but adjust, and the balance of the price of the fees, what the contribution for the general public is. In this case, I know we worry about common school fund, but maybe we have to have a general fund conversation. And I think it's going to be important to see, what's your bare minimum. And if we move up to a slightly more robust model of funding, we can produce, instead of taking, I'm guessing here, right? It takes 6 months to do X, but we could do it in 3 or 1 month, right? So from a customer, what are we getting for that customer service in, the increase that goes with fees? But it's a really important conversation. And frankly, one we're doing across all of state government. We got to stop doing stuff on the cheap if we actually want to meet the people's needs. So it'll be good to hear the presentation when you're ready to give it. Madam Secretary, any questions, comments?
No, that was a wonderful presentation. It was very interesting. And it's one of the best parts about being on the land board is learning about all of these different projects. As a lifelong Oregonian, there's so much that I don't know about my state. I did have a really sort of teensy-weensy question since you asked. On your map, you have emergency authorizations located all over the state. What are those?
Governor
I've had the
Kotek.
exact same. Yep. What is that?
Yeah, so Governor Kotek, Secretary Griffin Valade, that is a great question. And so those are authorizations for allowing someone to do work. Usually it's associated with the stream and flooding. And so, for someone who's trying to develop a project, develop a piece of property, you've got time in advance. And so you've got the ability to analyze what aquatic resources are there, what's the level of their function, how valuable are they, and how can you avoid and minimize impacts to them and offset any effects. But if you've got a culvert that's blocked and the stream is flowing across the road or eating away the road, you don't have time to do a permit process. And so we have through statute the ability to issue an emergency authorization but over the phone, really just by word. I mean, we prefer paper if we can do it, but depending upon how fast that emergency is, we'll issue an authorization over the phone to allow the county road department, that's usually who it is, to do the minimum amount of work necessary to alleviate the immediate threat to property and health. And so, and then after the fact, we'll come in and work with them to restore the site to as good a condition as would be as if they'd come forward with a permit initially. But that way we can address that rapidly. And if you look at where those are, they tend to be in mountainous areas or at the base of mountainous areas.
I know.
We also just recently had an emergency authorization on the North Coast. A barge hit a dock. You were over at ODA.
I missed that one.
So you missed that one. But Senator Weber got involved and got all the agencies on the phone and said, how can we fix this? And all of us pitched in. We gave our emergency authorization and all the other agencies did as well. So
I actually asked that in part because I grew up in the Canyon City, John Day area, and I sort of wondered what that was. But that little creek floods all the time, so I can imagine an emergency going on there.
Yes, and Secretary Blade, I actually the beginning part of my career at state government, I was actually at the Department of Transportation, working on wetlands and waterways regulatory issues. And I can tell you that with climate change, we're going to see more of this. We're expecting greater flooding, just more intense precipitation events. And unfortunately, the tables that are used to size culverts are based upon a drier period. And so the culverts, even if they're installed per current standards, tend to be undersized, or we're anticipating that's going to be the case. And so I think we're going to see more of this, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. On that note, hopefully we prepare for the 2025 legislative session and legislative leaders are teeing up for a transportation package. Basic maintenance is and making sure basics we need to do are done well. We're having to adjust our culvert standards. That will be an ongoing cost. So we should know what that is. Speaking of culverts, that reminds me, on part of my One Oregon listening tour, I was in Clackamas last week and had a chance to be in Estacada to see in person the Wade Creek Restoration Project.
oh, cool.
We had at the previous meeting awarded them a land board award for the work they were doing. Absolutely incredible. Just a wonderful project. A combination of, habitat restoration, flooding mitigation, community development. It's just, so if you haven't had a chance to come out, go out to Estacada and check it out. Super impressive. So glad we were able to do that. Other questions, comments about this fabulous report? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Director, and the entire team who worked on this. Thank you. Thanks for your hard work. That will move on to item number 6. Elliott State Research Farm.
Well, thank you, Governor. Item 6 is an informational item on the Elliott State Research Forest, as you indicated. Excuse me. And what a journey this continues to be. And that's quite the understatement. This was not the run of show we predicted for this agenda item back in November. But I believe we have some strong foundational principles that will keep our project moving. And we have a packet of materials for you at your desk, which will be this slide and a number of other materials that will help you as we move along. and ask for questions. So, but first I would say, well, I'm certainly disappointed by Oregon State University's announcement a few weeks ago. The department and key stakeholders who have supported and advanced this work over many years, and it's been my tenure. We want to continue working to make the Elliott State Research Forest a reality, staying true to those foundations that we've built and the longstanding cornerstone principles we have been working within. And we'll show you those on one of our slides. So today I want to do two things. One, I want to review those foundations. And two, I want to map out our progress and build on those foundations, complete the work in progress and establish the Elliott State Research Forest in 2024. What I'd really like to do is have a candid conversation with you. I'd like to hear your thoughts and your feedback as I walk through what we want to achieve in creating the research forest and what I see as necessary steps to make it happen. This discussion will guide our work with tribes, county governments, stakeholders, and others over the next few months, and what we bring to you for information and action in 2024. So if that sounds good to you, I'd like to have that conversation. All right, well, I'm going to invite Brett Brownscombe to the table. Brett's over there. Brett has been leading our Elliott transition work. He's been a tremendous asset to these efforts. And I'd like him to be able to help answer questions as needed and offer a perspective. He has worked the most on, I guess we can share. He has worked the most on the Habitat Conservation Plan, along with Bill Ryan and Ryan Singleton, our forester. I was very involved in the beginning, and then great work happened. Jeff Huntington was involved before you took him away. I like to mention that. But fortunately, it was Jeff's suggestion that I ask Brett to step in, and it's been great. So we'll start with our slides. So the first slide that you see is the State Land Board's vision for the Elliott. Now, I realize this land board has changed, and Treasurer Reed's been with us from the beginning. But I want to touch back to the foundations of this work and the State Land Board's original vision of this forest. So, and Treasurer Reed offered a lot in the beginning on this project and continues to do so, but it was his vision to turn this into a research forest. So I really wanted to deliver on that. It's pretty important for Oregon, and I'd really like to make that work for you. It is a vision that reflects the many different hopes expressed for the future of the Elliott State Forest and the Land Board's desire, and this is the key one, to have a public forest that contributes many benefits to Oregon. When we began exploring this idea of a research forest, the guiding question was, can we achieve this vision on this slide here with a research forest? Through years of collaborative and challenging work, we found that yes, we can, and with even more benefits for our state, like contributing to climate resilience, indigenous culture and stewardship, and economic innovation. So now that I've set the table, and you've seen all these great things that we set out to do, I'll go to our second slide. And Brett, I bet you can punch that button. Do you know how? Yay. Okay. So here's our cornerstone principles. We have the framework we created together, the cornerstone principles that diverse stakeholders, tribes, and others found agreement on. This slide also shows the actions needed for the Elliott to operate as a research forest. So I want to take a beat here and reflect on what this slide represents. It's the enduring desire of many people with very different and very strong opinions to bring an Elliott State Research Forest to life. And Brett served in other administrations, and he's very familiar with these controversial things that have happened in the Elliott. So from a deeply conflicted past, with tremendous effort by all involved, we arrived here with agreement on the Elliott's future as a research forest, which was an absolutely amazing achievement. Great progress has been made on these key actions, which we have long understood as necessary pieces for a research forest, and were captured as such with bipartisan and strong legislative endorsements in Senate Bill 1546. While OSU's decision not to vote to participate nullifies the key near-term direction of Senate Bill 1546, the spirit of that legislative direction will be reflected in our pathway forward, even as we acknowledge our new reality. And as former legislators, we get it. If your bill doesn't pass or you don't find success, we know another way around. So we're on that path. Our destination remains that research forest. The trail we need to take to complete these actions is now a bit different. There's been some elevation gain. We'll change our shoes, fill our water bottles like good Oregonians, and keep hiking because we are close. We are, oh, so close. So I want to map out how I see the route ahead, and I'd like to know if that's what you see as well. Before I go on, though, I just want to ask if you have any thoughts before we move on to slide 3, because there's quite a few things up here that you might like to ask me about.
Thank you, Director. I have a comment, but I'm going to defer to my colleagues to see if anyone has any. Mr. Treasurer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question that occurs to me as I look at both the first and the second slide. There's two things here that I think are related, but I'd love to hear a little more about how you see them and how you chose these words. On the first slide, you talked about working forest research. And on the second slide, meaningful scientific research. I think I know what those mean and how they relate, but I'd love to hear your thoughts as to how they connect with each other.
Thank you, Treasurer, Governor, Madam Secretary. Exactly what it means, working forest research using science in the research. This was always meant to be a working forest to provide for the economy in the local community, and also to provide the opportunity for the research on how you manage a forest of this size.
That's consistent with what I recall too, that scientific approach to understanding how a working forest proceeds. That's interesting and consistent with my desire. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Madam Secretary?
So this may be an ignorant question, but is there a reason why we cannot try to work with a different university?
Well, that's a good question, Madam Secretary.
Odd question maybe, but.
Well, I will talk about that as we talk about what we are wanting to do to engage in research. Oregon State University has provided a lot of great work. They've done some tremendous research over the last 4.5 years, and it's valuable research. Their board of trustees, their university president just decided that they were not going to take this project to the board of trustees for a vote, which was one of the final pieces to put the puzzle together. They had concerns about financial viability and other concerns, and I'll talk about those too. I think as we go down this path to keep this as a research forest, we're going to look first to Oregon State because they have all the data. We own the data too, but they have done all the groundwork. But as Oregon State University College of Forestry indicated to us, there are a lot of researchers interested in this work. So I don't think there'll be a shortage of places to go to look for people who want to engage or entities that want to engage in the research. But this is an Oregon university, and so I'm not going to kick them to the curb. I'm going to invite them back in on our terms, and we'll see where that goes.
And what are our terms?
Well, our terms are that we're managing the forest. And the terms of engagement prior were that Oregon State University was going to not only lead the research, but also manage the forest. And that became clear towards the end of our work that wasn't going to work out very well. So we will now manage the forest, and we know how to do that.
You're saying Oregon State is still involved, or they've just done the groundwork to help?
Well, we haven't spoken to the university that much since their letter. We've sort of had to work through some things internally. And I think when we get some direction from the land board today, we'll have a better sense of where we're going to go from here. We have some short-term things that we need to get done, which is figuring out how we're going to manage this forest in the short term and what we're going to do in the long term. But we anticipated this might happen. We just sort of anticipated we might have a little more notice to work with. But we always anticipated that this might happen if we couldn't get to the point we needed to. But I think we're ready. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Madam Secretary. This seems like a good moment for me to just speak directly to the research force, broadly speaking. You know, when I was Speaker of the House, very supportive of the effort, in a lot of ways led by the Treasurer, to get to a research force and the decoupling from the Common School Fund. I had left the legislature by the time there had been some actual votes. So I think it's important for people to understand, as the governor, where I stand. These first two slides, complete agreement on. These are the principles that have shaped where we are today. There's always more details in the future. However, the principles, I believe, will continue regardless of the fact that Oregon State University made a choice, even though they were heavily involved, to not want to manage the forest. And I just want to say up front that I have tremendous respect for President Murthy, the board at OSU, the researchers there, the faculty there. I fully expect that OSU as a research institution will be involved from the science end of this. They've just made a decision for there's a lot of going on at OSU, okay? There's been a lot. And so they made a choice, but that doesn't mean they're not going to be a partner going forward. It's about the difference of the management piece, which we'll get to. So I just want to thank them for being so engaged up to this point, and they will continue to be engaged. It's going to look a little different, and we have to focus on, you know, going forward, but no harm, no foul on my part. I just, you know, now we have to figure out how we continue to meet the principles that have been put out in the first two slides. So thank you, everyone, for the hard work on this.
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate agreement with those principles and the development of where we are today. That vision continues, and those cornerstone principles as well. And you can see on the bottom of that slide the key actions that will be needed, and we'll talk more about that on slide 3. So slide 3 is our pathway to the Elliott State Research Forest. This is how we are going to make this work. So before I begin, however, I wanted to acknowledge the letter from the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Sayusla Indians. We also call them the CT Klutsi. That letter was dated December 5th. It's at your desk. You also received it in advance. While I do not agree with all the assertions in that letter, I certainly don't agree. There is space within the path forward for the continued meaningful engagement of tribal governments, and there remains a strong desire to advance tribal partnerships. There always has been. We are, as always, balancing, however, multiple interests while working within the agreed upon foundations endorsed to date by the Land Board, as we just spoke about, the legislature, and many interests, including tribes plural. We are scheduled to continue our consultations with the CT Klutzy on their requested timeline on January 18. Other tribes with ancestral connections to the Elliott also desire to remain connected and participate in meaningful conversations as well. I just recently met with the Coquel tribe when I was in Coos Bay for a management commission meeting at the South Slough. And had a long, meaningful conversation with Chair Brenda Mead. Here's what I see as the pathway forward on your screen. And this slide provides the highlights of the full overview document you have on your desks. The most important point here is the 6 key actions that you see on this slide. They can all be completed within the existing authority of the State Land Board and the department. But our esteemed counsel, Matt DeVore, will correct me if that is in error, but I have checked with him and I believe we are good. But interrupt Mr. DeVore if you find some objection to that at any point along the way. So we're going to go through point by point. 1, we need a management structure. DSL can immediately step into that role. We currently own and manage the forest. We always have. DSL would continue in this role, developing and implementing a near-term management framework and program. We have requested the legislatively approved $4 million provided for the Senate Bill 1546 Research Forest Agency be reallocated to the department in fiscal year 24 for work as the forest manager. We don't have the capacity funding wise to do this work unless we have some funding. Otherwise, it will need to come from the Common School Fund. In the long term, there may be other options for the management role. But for now, in the near term, we can provide that management and the certainty necessary to complete other actions. We have an excellent forester. Ryan Singleton is in the room today in the back, and Vernon Wolf assists Ryan, but we'll need more staff to move forward. Ryan is a top-notch forester and himself a graduate of Oregon State University's forestry program. We can make this work with supporting staff, particularly if that $4 million is transferred over. So far on item 1, before I move to item 2, would you like to, any of you like to ask some questions?
Thank you, Director Walker. I was wondering if it, just for clarity's sake, that after each key action, I just see if there are any questions or comments, just then we don't have to, go back up to the top of the list. Any comments or questions on that first action as described by the director? No. Thank you both. And I think the emphasis on short term is really important. So I personally support DSL taking those steps for custodial management. The $4 million for the startup budget makes sense to move for the agency to be able to do that work. I think you can tell, I do think DSL is a good fit for long-term management, but open to collaboration, right? There's always a phasing here. Let's move forward in the near term and continue to have conversations for the long term.
And we have key stakeholders that we can do that with.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good.
It's a team effort. So yes.
And we also desire to work with an advisory body to develop the management framework. And we'll talk about that as we get down to one of these other points. So thank you, Governor. Okay, so point number 2, we need an oversight structure. That's what I was just talking about. Stakeholder engagement was strong. Collaboration, excuse me, has been essential to this work. With the advisory committee that I first told them I was only going to keep them for a year. I'm almost embarrassed to say that. And I think I hear Bob Ballinger's chuckle in the back, or someone's chuckle, but it could be a lot of us in the room. And I remember our first meeting saying that, but it became clear that we couldn't get it done in a year because this is complex. And so we developed into the prospective board, and we had land board approval of the members. And it really remains absolutely essential to the success of a publicly owned research forest to have that continued stakeholder advisory work. We having that appointed oversight body will help ensure desire for accountability, transparency, public involvement in decision making, to have those things remain centered in governance of the forest. We can manage it, but I think the public really feels strongly about wanting to be involved in what they perceive as their forest. So DSL would name an advisory body now with consultation with your staff to guide work in the near term, including collaboratively crafting management and oversight structures. In February, we're going to have a big land board meeting in February, just warning you. We will ask the land board to appoint a board of directors to oversee and direct management by DSL on behalf of the land board. And this I have cleared with Mr. DeVore. Nod your head or say yes, Mr. DeVore.
Yes. Yes, Governor, Director Walker, as we've talked about this, the plan is within DSL's authority.
For the record, legal counsel is saying yes.
Yes, nodding won't work. So thank you, Mr. DeVore. So my thought is to draw from prospective board members who are supportive of our mission going forward, because we need all the support we can get to move forward. We're done arguing about things. We've got a forest. We understand the groundwork. And so we'd like to have folks who are committed to seeing this be successful. So I'll stop and pause here and before I go on.
Thank you, Director Walker. Comments or questions on this item? For the
Sounds
treasurer?
good.
Madam Secretary?
Sounds good.
Good. Okay. Yeah, I think I would just say that not having been on the board very long, just seeing how the agency works with the arrangement with the South Slough, I think is something to look at, that, you know, that semi-autonomous structure. So you're not in the day-to-day, but that we have some amazing people who have been very engaged. I have to laugh, you know, be careful what you ask for. Once you get engaged, it's hard. We keep you until things
We do.
get figured out. Having an appointed board, I think makes a lot of sense. And we have some guidance from the legislation that will guide us. I mean, there's no reason to have a significant change of direction there. And I, you know, just look forward to working with folks who have been so engaged as we move forward. So
Great. Thank you. Yeah, and you certainly.
Sorry to interject, and Governor Kotek and Treasurer Reed and Secretary Griffin-Valade. Just to clarify.
Yourself, since you not have done that before, have you?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Okay, then.
Sorry, let me interject twice, I guess. For the record, my name is Brett Brownscombe, and I work for DSL as the Elliott State Forest Transition Director. So what I wanted to ask, just to be clear, because I think we want to be clear with you all on what the terms are that you'd like us to march forward with as a department. When we do this, working on an oversight body with authority, oversight authority, we're assuming we'll do it kind of drawing from prospective board members, but also making sure that those members are on board with the path that you sketched forward today. Is that everybody's intention? Okay.
I see heads nodding. Yes.
Okay. I just want to be sure.
I think checking in with folks about where they want to go too. Like this is, you have to have those conversations.
Yeah, the back collaborate. Yeah. Thank you, Governor.
Yeah, I mean, we don't pay these people to be on the board. We reimburse them for their travel expenses and their lunch if we have a lunch meeting or a dinner meeting. But they volunteer their time and it's very much appreciated. All right, we'll go to point number 3. To finalize that viable budget, the financial viability. Oh my goodness, that was quite the endeavor. Last week, DSL completed that financial viability determination for the forest, which was part of the Senate Bill 1546 direction. We based that determination on an independent assessment of financial information provided by Oregon State University, as well as information and feedback provided by the prospective board, DSL zone forester, forestry consultants familiar with the Elliott, and others. We did not do this in a vacuum. We shared the determination with land board members on December 8th. And the determination has also been shared with the prospective board and posted along with related materials on the department's website. So what did we learn? The determination indicates that an Elliott State research forest can be financially viable, but risk and questions exist related to the current path. Because our future path is one we can shape, I included recommendations in our financial viability determination document. And I want to give significant credit to Mr. Brownscombe for framing that document. My proposed approach is to address these recommendations as part of developing a business plan, which would include addressing startup costs and an associated budget for the 25-27 biennium. While it is my intent to bring this plan back to the land board, at this moment, it certainly would help to have your feedback on some key items. So here's what's on my mind. Let's go through these and then have a conversation. As far as costs, budgets to date have assumed OSU would be both the lead research forest manager and the researcher, and that the state would build a new administrative agency. These assumptions are unlikely at this time. The presumed path involves DSL as forest manager while working through this issue, as well as resolution of the research entity question with an advisory body. Under any scenario, and unless you direct me otherwise, future budgets must live within the basic principle of A, addressing base costs for forest operations first, including HCP compliance, that's Habitat Conservation Plan, and B, scaling research to remaining available revenue. Bless you. That was one of the problems we had consistently, is we could never get to a budget that seemed to pencil out. So that's critical. Some essential operational costs, such as wildfire protection, HCP monitoring and compliance, are growing. They are not reducing. And our independent review flagged potential uncertainties over timber revenue from current approaches. Plus, we want to have meaningful revenue on hand above and beyond base management costs for that meaningful research that, Mr. Treasurer, you asked me about. The state's efforts as a leader in climate resilience are also relevant to the Elliott, and the forest role related to carbon storage has long been part of the Elliott State research forest discussions. It was discussed at the get-go. It has been, we have a draft carbon project feasibility study on hand that we presented to you. We did not present in full detail, but we presented it to you what we were doing, and we now have one ready. So as a matter of shoring up revenue, I see a couple of potential pathways. We either advance an HCP option that still achieves the HCP, but produces more timber revenue, which means cutting more trees, or we maintain our current HCP path, but ensure it is paired with a carbon project of some kind. I want to pause here because I really want your feedback on these suggestions. And this is where we've come to at this point. And I need suggestions, agreement, advice. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Governor, for the conversation.
Thank you, Madam Director. Well, I think given conversations up to this point, we all understand the importance of financial viability. Mr. Treasurer, do you have any comments or questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think at this point, for me, that, well, frankly, I appreciate something you said on a slightly different topic a moment ago, Governor. I don't see a reason, maybe paraphrasing slightly, a reason for significant change in direction. I think I'd apply that to this, to the idea of the work that has gone to the gone into getting us where we are, I think has not ceased to have value. And so I'm interested in continuing along that path that would have a role. I think that for carbon and for harvest along, that's I think what has been balanced in what's in front of us to this point. So always being open to new information, but I don't see, again, quoting the governor on another topic, a reason for significant change.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Madam Secretary.
Nor do I see at this point a reason to change.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Again, the financial viability is important here. You know, I know we're going to get to the HCP. We need to finish the HCP and get it to the feds. Okay. We need to have that resolved. And there's really good work going on there. I know we're going to get to that. And I wanted to start off with that because I think we're going to have to understand some adjustments to reflect the changes as oversight and management comes to the agency, right, around the viability issue. It also seems to me, based on the financial assessment we're seeing from the documents that you're providing, that the forest has to be self-sustaining over time. And just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, there are two pathways for moving forward with an HCP in my head. We can either pursue an HCP that contemplates more revenue from higher timber harvest volume, or stay with the current HCP path forward, being clear that we are contemplating a carbon project to help finance the forest, and also being consistent with the state's carbon policy and our research goals. I believe that's a very viable path. So where I think that's very consistent with the principles that have been laid out and with the way the forest has been discussed up until this point. But that is the crux of, I think, to get to the financial viability piece. That combination that you mentioned of following the HCP, but also considering, you know, carbon as part of the financial viability.
All right. Thank you, Governor. I was waiting to hear that. So rather than move forward on an HCP that increases the timber volume harvest to make it financially viable, we will continue on the path of an HCP with a carbon project.
That's where I am.
Okay.
So.
And I think I heard the treasurer say that.
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Secretary.
Madam Director, yes, I think there's obviously a lot of work to do to determine exactly how that plays out and the balance that we've all been talking about. But yes, I think there's a role for both.
Okay.
I certainly support that also.
Thank you both, all three of you, because when we had our contractor come in and give a presentation to you, it is clear, some people don't believe so, but we do, that a carbon project can be consistent with research on the forest. So as long as it's consistent with the research, we believe a carbon project can work. And Brett, I think, wants to add a point. He's my backstop.
Director and
Yeah.
Mr. Treasurer.
Thanks. Sorry, maybe what you're going to answer anyway, but I wonder about the how we're thinking about how the containing the costs in that context, the both the research. I'll stop there for the moment. As we think about that research, how do the costs get contained?
Okay, and I'm going to let Brett answer that one.
Okay. Governor Kotek and Treasurer Reed, to your question, I think the reason this is coming up, so on the cost side first, it would be the principle of basically covering costs that are tied to base forest management first and making sure those are covered. And then the surplus, if you will, would be allocated to research still under any scenario.
Uh, yes, I think that's part of it, but also just being clear that we're not letting those costs escalate, so that they are connected. We're not letting one detract from the other. And the definition that we talked about before, that the research is certainly around carbon, but also around how a working forest works.
Yeah, agreed and understood. And that's fully viable as an approach to cost. And I think that one of the reasons Director Walker brought up the two options is we're at a point with the Habitat Conservation Plan where we need to make decisions on the final form. And in the context of the financial viability report, shoring up an approach to cost and revenues is relevant. And on the revenue side, part of what the reason this is coming up is because we could take a path. There are different approaches or alternatives evaluated in the Habitat Conservation Plan. Some relate to still achieving, or one relates to achieving a habitat conservation plan while increasing timber harvest revenues, and that's an approach to shoring up costs. The approach to a carbon project in some ways involves intentionally foregoing what could otherwise be harvested or cut. And so that's why we're putting the two out to you all as a land board for your sense of direction on this, because we need to be clear on the path of the HCP while getting clear also on, are we foregoing harvest intentionally for a reason, or are we going down that increased harvest path?
I guess for me, the bottom line is that I don't want costs to be the driving factor for us to determine the other things. We should be making those decisions intentionally about where we want to go, and not later say, well, the costs are such that that's determining other things.
That's perfect. Thank you. And the costs, as I indicated, I think, Ryan, I believe the fire costs have increased 25%. Okay, so our forester indicates our fire costs have increased 25% over the last 2 years. So that's a lot, 25%. Try to work that into your household budget. It's tough. So, any other questions on this point? We'll move to point 4. All right. So here again, we need to finalize our forest management plan. Oregon State University College of Forestry has done some really good work and much appreciated work in preparing a forest management plan. They submitted the plan on December 1st as a deliverable of their agreement with the department, and I appreciated that. The plan contains valuable material, but needs to be converted for DSL's use in managing the forest. It's a 900-page document, and we are not going to be able to manage the forest to that level with a 900-page document. So it will need to be revised and simplified to reflect a new oversight structure, final HCP revisions, and to ensure flexibility for management in support of multiple research possibilities. And this gets back to what you were saying, Madam Secretary, about who could be involved in the research, and there can be multiple entities involved. And we also want to ensure the plan is aligned with the path coming forward, the path forward coming out of today's meeting. So an updated plan will come to the land board for action in early 2024. I'm expecting that to be February. I see that my staff wrote early, which might mean April. But we're going to try for February, but just know that February is right around the corner. In fact, we always start planning for the next land board meeting the day after land board. So anyway, at this point, I'm going to pause and see if you have any questions or thoughts about the forest management plan before I go on to the HCP.
Thank you, Director Walker. Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the question for me is going to be sort of a combination related to the forest management plan, the HCP. So I think I'll pause until we hear that point.
Oh, thank you very much, Madam Secretary.
I have nothing right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'll take this moment to thank Oregon State University for the great work that they did. Doing that kind of management plan takes a lot of work. And I fully agree with the approach that the director is recommending, that, move forward based on that great work, but simplify it, for the changing circumstance we have here now with the agency. I hope that when you're looking at that, please make sure we address the role of carbon and climate resilience on the forest. I know it's in there. February or April, the staff will figure out how to do this. But making sure we continue to have engagement with stakeholders. We have a little bit of a window here. Remember, we just heard in November that things were changing. So take a breath.
Yeah.
And, talk with some folks as we move to that, more simplified management plan going forward.
But Madam Chair, we don't need to wait till April if we're ready before that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I feel the stress coming off the staff a little bit. So I'm like, it'd
Understood.
be nice to do it all in February. And honestly, I think it would be hard if we didn't do it all in February. So hopefully that's the goal, to have it all at once.
Yes, I agree with you, Governor, Treasurer, and Secretary of State. We're going to try our best in February. And there was a lot of public input on the plan, the forest management plan. There were a number of complaints. I read through them that we didn't have enough time. I mean, this F&P was supposed to be given to us sooner rather than later, but it took a while. And so folks had some concern about not having sufficient time for feedback, public feedback. But I think especially if we engage our members, our prospective board members now, they're pretty familiar with where we're at, and we simplify the plan, and we do what you have pointed out. We'd like to address the role of carbon sequestration and climate resilience on the forest, and the existence of that carbon project, as long as it's consistent with research and any other things. I think we can get there. I know our forester, Ryan, facetiously said, we can have give me that forest management plan, I can chop it down to 30 pages. So when we got the word from OSU that they weren't going forward, I said, so Ryan, how do you plan to chop this down to 30 pages? And he says, cut out the fluff and reduce the font size. So I had to laugh over that one. There isn't a lot of fluff. There might be some pictures and stuff, but the font size for these old eyes, no. In fact, all my writing is 14-point font.
Mine's 16.
So, there you go. So even with glasses, I need 14 points. So we'll make it somewhere between 30 and 900 pages, but we're already started on it. So anyway, thank you for that feedback. Did you want to add something? He's my sounding board here, and he's listening. If I don't say something he wants me to say.
I don't want to prolong this because we have work to do on the forest management plan. Quick. But Governor and Treasurer Reed and Secretary Griffin-Valade, I wanted to just clarify, because this is the interplay between what you said on the previous item or rows in the slide and this one. I think, Governor, when you said make sure the forest management plan incorporates the role of carbon and climate, is the sense of all of you on the land board to make that clear as a carbon project, that in lieu of pursuing an HCP path that yields higher timber and still gets an HCP, the path would be pursued around our current approach, but embedding a carbon project in that forest management plan that's based on foregone harvest revenue. I just want to be sure we have the sense of that's where we're going.
Madam Chair, and Mr. Brascombe, I certainly agree with that. Again, there are, for me, lots of questions about what a carbon project, very generally described, turns out to be in the
I'm going to ask that
context.
very question.
Yeah, there are definitions to be completed and descriptions, and in the context of working forest research as well. So, but with those caveats, I'd say yes to that question.
Is
Okay.
that a yes also from the secretary?
Yes, it is. I wouldn't mind seeing a definition of carbon project.
Well, we will have that for you in February.
Oh, great.
I see all this, the progression is pathways, you know, and the staff needs direction, but what I'm hearing is proceed with how you described it, and we'll want more details in February. So,
Great,
Thank
thank you. Okay, good job, Mr. Branscombe. I hear him at night when I go to sleep, whispering in my ear, don't forget to ask about this. All right, we're gonna move on to our fifth. I forgot we have one more, and that's the Habitat Conservation Plan that you mentioned, Mr. Treasurer. Wow, this one has been, this is a big deal, because I said at the outset of this project that failure was not an option when it came to a habitat conservation plan, because I have dead soldiers in my bookshelf in my office from previous directors. HCPs that never made it to fruition and implementation. And I clearly said I would not fail on that. And I'm not going to. I'm going to stick it out. I'm not going to retire yet. I'm going to make sure we get our habitat conservation plan and we get this where we need it to be. So significant revisions have been made since we submitted our draft HCP last year. So we've already submitted it to the services, and you have letters at your desk saying that they've been enjoying our collaboration and working. So some of the changes were made to address conservation issues, some for financial viability, and some to address tribal requests by CT Klutzy. No other tribe has requested specific changes to the HCP. We submitted these updates. We received those letters of confirmation of process status from the federal services, and we met our HCP, our Senate Bill 1546 HCP direction from the legislature. We've done good. We have met a lot of Senate Bill 1546, and the part we couldn't do was not our failure. So near-term work remains on revising the HCP to reflect a shift, as you indicated, Governor, to DSL management and completing responses to the agency comments in the federal process. It's a back and forth on this. We talk to them, they give us some comments, we talk some more, they give us more comments, and we are now closing in on those final revisions because I said, I want this done by January 31. So we anticipate filing our responsive revisions on the HCP by January 31, 2024, because I am not coming to you in February for our land board meeting and saying, oh, by the way, we haven't done it yet on the HCP. So we will submit our final revisions, and we anticipate that we will still obtain those incidental take permits in summer of 2024. Now, no, the summer is June, July, and August. So somewhere in that summer timeframe, we will have our incidental take permits. I'm confident of that. I intend to keep the HCP effort moving. And like I said, I indicated failure was not an option because not completing the HCP raises risks on a number of fronts, significant risks, including increased costs. We've already spent a great deal of money on this HCP, but also reduced certainty for research forest viability and management that has long been idle. We haven't done anything on the Elliott except the little management that Titan Kelly has done, the road maintenance and that sort of thing, but we haven't done any significant management for a decade, and we're wasting a forest. So that's my plan on the HCP. And I know, Mr. Treasurer, you wanted to wait to hear that before you commented. And so I'll throw it back to you all for some questions.
Mr. Treasurer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Madam Director, I think you mostly answered the question I wanted to understand, and that is that maybe correct if I didn't hear you correctly, that the revisions that would be necessary based on where we are now, you don't feel like that's going to delay us either in submitting or hopefully in receiving approval for the HCP. Is that right?
Mr. Treasurer, I would say that is correct. And Brett, I would like you to add a little bit about what the revisions are. The revisions are necessary as a result of OSU not managing the forest. What did I miss? There's some other things, but.
Yeah, Governor Kotek, and to your question, Treasurer Reed, we can maintain the schedule. We have to do, for example, the draft Habitat Conservation Plan had some references to the Senate Bill 1546 new state agency authority as the manager. That won't be happening. So we have some cleanup to do, and we need to right size and verify that DSL in managing the forest will manage all the commitments in the HCP. But that shouldn't throw off our timeline. And that, so the summer of 2024 is when we anticipate the next steps and conclusion of them.
Our contractor, ICF, is already involved. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago and she said, I'm still working on this. You do your thing and I'll continue to take out what is no longer relevant.
And so I think you also said that our federal partners are generally aware of the change in approach, and they're not indicating significant concern as a result.
They are, and Mr.
We're not getting.
No, they are. Yes, Ms. Treasurer, they are aware. We had a meeting recently. I didn't participate, but Brett did, and Mr. DeVore did. The legal counsel for the services attended, and they wanted to know, well, what does this mean? And I think it was a very successful meeting. They understood the direction that we're going. They approve. And Brett, do you want to add anything else? The feedback I got was that it was a good meeting, constructive.
Yeah, thanks, Director Walker and Governor and Treasurer Reed. We're in touch weekly with the services. We have weekly meetings with both services, federal services, and everybody has had questions in the wake of OSU's decision not to take up a vote. And I think we're today included as part of clarifying where things are headed. So with the services, they're clear. Today will help. And we're doing the back and forth response to comments with the federal agencies, which we'll continue to do, but with the intention of we need to tie these off. Here's our product and our answer, our responses to your questions. Let's get this moving forward into the final stages that would conclude in 2024 in the summer. So they have been really good to work with in understanding our, new and evolving direction.
And some of those folks at the services have worked on previous iterations of an HCP before us. So they're really anxious to have us be successful, but they need to do their job and make sure we're meeting all their criteria.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. An important line of information to share. I appreciate the proactive nature given the change in November with the federal partners. I'm not hearing other hiccups. It's just getting this part clarified and then moving forward.
Mhm.
So thank you. Madam Secretary, any comments on you?
No, I look forward to hearing the next report.
Great, thank you. Well, we'll keep moving forward on that. All right, we're back to our screen and we have the sixth and final action. Exploring research partnerships. And Madam Secretary, this gets to the point you raised earlier. So when the above work, all that work up there on a management and oversight structure is complete, we will be in a position to explore options for research partners that are willing and able to advance research consistent with the direction that we've all discussed here today. We would first look to OSU, as I mentioned. Other research partners exist. And in fact, as I said, Oregon State University, during our planning to date about the significant interest in the Elliott from other entities and institutions, indicated there was interest. But OSU is a great Oregon institution. And it took up the research forest charge from the land board many years ago. And it's engaged in this effort with intention and foundational contributions to date. We just didn't get to where we wanted to be in the end. But our hope remains that OSU continues to see value in the path forward as discussed today. And I know Dean Tom DeLuca of the College of Forestry believes that in that research. They wouldn't have stuck with it for so long had you not believed in that, Tom, and your staff. So I'm hoping that Oregon State will find a way to participate in this nationally and internationally relevant research forest endeavor. The staff at the College of Forestry have been truly invested in this project, and they collectively possess a great deal of knowledge about forest research. And I actually miss seeing them at all of our meetings. I don't really have anything more to add on that point before I wrap up. So I want to turn it back to you and see if you have some other comments.
Thank you, Director Walker. Any other questions, comments on this piece, Mr. Treasurer?
Not on this piece, but on other things, yeah.
Madam Secretary?
Not for me either.
I feel like I've already said something earlier, so back to you, Director, and then I think we'll have time for final comment.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. Well, in closing, yes, we have work to do on the path ahead, but it's doable. It is. Unless you think we must be tired and can't go on, I will admit I'm very tired. But trust me, I have had feelings in recent weeks that I'm too tired to go on. But I want to say that it's important to recognize how incredibly far we've come already and the significance of what we're building upon. This is a legacy project, and I've talked about it with my grandchildren, that this is a legacy project that grandma's involved in. And one day you're going to talk about it with your own children. So because we've decoupled the forest from its common school fund obligations, that was amazing. We no longer have the valid interests of school kids in timber being structurally pitted against the valid interests of wildlife, species, and conservation. They're all valid interests, but they were just constantly beating up on each other and couldn't see the forest for the trees. We have more options now than ever before for the Elliott. Diverse interests, including tribes, conservation, timber, education beneficiaries, and others came together on the fundamentals of a research forest vision. And this vision has motivated extremely positive interest in partnership from others, including federal and state management agencies, counties, tribes, watershed associations. They're ecstatic. And adjacent landowners, one of whom is even interested in donating their land because of the research forest vision. We received broad bipartisan support from the Oregon legislature for this research forest vision and direction. And you know how hard that is to get that broad bipartisan support from that body. And we have related federal congressional support. This cannot be discounted or understated. And baseline monitoring and science has already begun on the forest, thanks in large part to OSU's work to date. So we're at a point where moving the Elliott beyond the conflict of the past has been enabled and remains well within reach. This has been the dream of many Oregonians, and particularly for those of us who grew up with the Elliott in our backyard. It was my playground. We want to succeed. We must succeed, and I will do my best to collaboratively guide us to that end. So this concludes. I got goosebumps. I've had goosebumps on this project over the last 4 or 5 years, at different points, and I got them just now. They come inextricably, they just come. So it comes when something really important is on the horizon. And this concludes what we've prepared for conversation today. I welcome continued discussion. I'll turn it back to you, Governor, because I really am anxious to hear from you, whether you get goosebumps too and think this is a good plan.
Thank you, Director Walker, and thank you, Brett. I have confidence in this agency and I'm excited about the future of this force. So I'll just said enough today probably. So, Mr. Treasurer.
I'm sure I don't know that I can improve much on what's already been said, but I think many of us served with in the legislature. I saw a few weeks ago Peter Buckley in Southern Oregon. Made me think of something he used to always say as we were going onto the floor of the House about how it was important to remain rigidly flexible. So I think that applies here. Different path, but I don't sense any less commitment from people who got us here, and that gives me hope. But hope's not a strategy, so let's keep working.
It's not a strategy, but thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Madam Secretary.
Yeah, I like your line about hope. It's good. That was good. I have never been to the Elliott Forest and I really would like to go. And
We can make that happen.
I
It's a
would
day-long
love to.
affair.
I would love to.
And what little cell service.
Excellent. Yeah, no, this is a really interesting project. I'm happy to be part of it in the sense that you rely on the three of us to help you and also support you and give you permission to keep going forward in the direction that you are going. So thank you.
You're welcome and thank you. Because I'm the administrative arm of the land board, but I'm not the decision maker for this overarching work. And what I brought to you today was what we collectively have put forward as what we think is the best path. But I needed your support and understanding and guidance to make sure we're doing it right. So I appreciate
you have my support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Brett. And with that, we'll close on the informational item on the Elliott State Research Forest. We do have an informational item. So Director Walker, anything, before we break for the holidays and see you back in February?
Governor, I knew this would be a long meeting today, and so I left off I was looking for something historical, as I like to do at each meeting. And I just was so consumed by the Elliott, I didn't have time to think of it, but the Elliott is historical in and of itself. So I wish you all the best of the holiday season, and I look forward to seeing you in a few short weeks because February is just around the corner. One of our staff said the other day, May is just around the corner, and I'm like, May?
Yes, as I've realized in this first year, timelines come up very quickly.
They do.
Now it's December. Any other comments, Mr. Treasurer, Madam Secretary? Seeing none, again, just want to thank all the staff at DSL for their fantastic work. Thanks for those of you who have attended today and have been watching. We really appreciate that engagement. And with that, we will close the State Land Board meeting for December 12th, 2023.
Thank you.